Mixing with my mixing tip, layering mix automation. When applying mix automation, one of the things that you'll want to kind of focus on is getting individual instruments sort of in their place. So the way that I look at it, when you layer automation or when you put automation, is the primary focus is that you want to set like a nice, good static level that works from beginning to end with the song. So we can see here is a mix session, and it doesn't really have a lot of automation. We've kind of done a little bit of general automation. Some of the things have no automation settings at all. And essentially what I do is I start off with like some really good static levels. So in other words, as I'm kind of working through the individual sounds and setting them up, I kind of want to balance them. And a lot of what I do initially is sort of like what I might call like a pre-processing automation. In Pro Tools, it's really cool because you can actually go in and adjust the clip gain, and you can sort of balance out the sound and the performance. And this helps your compressors and things like that to work more consistently so that they don't get like over compressed in some sections and not compress enough in other sections. And it allows you to get like a good general balance. If you don't have clip gain control or using another app, you could just automate a trim plugin that you put like some kind of a gain plugin in the first slot, automate the gain control and kind of balance it off. So as it's going through, you more or less have the level, the static level that it'll be at. So as you're working through a mix, what'll happen is you'll get your basic static levels, and then you get to a part where it's like, now I want to shape this a little bit better. And primarily what you'll do is you'll focus on individual sections. So here, like we might start with the intro section and kind of set a level for some of the individual instruments. So you'll see maybe some subtle adjustments that I make here to the tambourine part, raising up a guitar part, lowering a keyboard part, etc. And kind of shaping them so that these individual things end up building the arrangement. So if we see here, what we have is a little intro piano part here in the beginning. And then I trimmed back some of the automation there. For the cymbals coming in. Layered in parts is like a little muted guitar part, which I lower in here. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of shaping. So if I want to bring out a certain thing, like this is like sort of a lead instrument in this section. So sometimes to make that kind of stand out a little bit more, instead of just, making it louder, I'm also pulling back other things. So these things layer, because if I just raise something up, what happens is then now it covers up other things. So the way that you can do that is rather than raising it up by 3 dB, maybe you lower some other things around it by a couple dB. In this case, it was a lot more, and it kind of builds later on the song, this particular guitar, so that you don't have to raise it as much. And it's almost like this kind of give-take principle where you kind of move something up, but you pull something else back a little bit that might be interfering with it, and therefore it stands out without being too loud. The cool part about that is as you kind of build that through the arrangement. So if you work past the overall level and you work section by section, now what you can do is you can apply automation to individual sections or elements of the mix. So maybe in the verse part, a certain thing comes down in level or raises up in level. By the time you get to the chorus, then you can raise certain parts and balance out other parts. Then you find as you kind of work through that maybe like here in the organ part, there's a certain part here where we want a line that the organ is doing to kind of raise up to lift the energy. Right, so it does like a little melodic theme thing there that helps to carry that section or from one to transition into the chorus. So I start with a little subtle thing. If I wanted to shape that a little bit later, I may say, maybe I really want to ramp that up so it really lands in that chorus pretty heavily. Maybe I use that as a transition part, and then I can shape that a little bit more. But as I go through, I kind of do these things and get a little bit more detailed and refined. So start with general sections. Work with them. Balance them out. Think as you're working with the automation to take something away whenever you bring something else in. You want a certain heavy guitar part to come out, pull back the acoustic guitars a little bit so you don't have to push them up as heavy. And what that does is it keeps you from just getting into this thing where you keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and the next thing is always louder and heavier than the previous one. Same type of thing with vocals. as you're working with a vocal, work section by section, get a good balance of it in each individual section. What you'll find as the arrangement builds, that maybe the vocal gets a little bit masked in this section here or there, and so you kind of pull it up overall, get it so that it feels like it's sitting in the same solid place, if that's what you're looking for, the same place in the mix, beginning to end. Now, of course, if you want a certain section for it to tuck in and be swallowed up by the rest of the instrumentation, keep that in mind. So it's always production specific. You have to work with that. But then what you'll do is you'll find maybe if you have a vocal that is really tucked in a track, those are the ones that require the most automation, because once you get into, past the individual phrases, then you start to get into what words are missing and what parts of words are missing and what syllables are missing and the ends of words and the breaths between words. And you keep paring down your automation so that it kind of gets smaller and smaller and smaller and more refined to bring out the character. And then you can really hear every single bit and every little note and everything and have it really tucked in a mix. Now this is an R&B track, so generally the vocal is going to sit up pretty high.
Yeah. Slow down, baby. Take a moment and breathe. I can hear what you're saying. Stop for a minute. Come sit there with me. I can see you're afraid, and I don't know what to tell you. You're scared I might fail you, and so you're leaving here before.
So now here there's two things going on. Probably one of them is that these background vocals are probably a touch loud. So I'm going to pull these back, in this case, before raising up the lead. And I can pull them back even more. So now if I need to raise the vocal, now if I want to raise this vocal here, I can start.
And I don't know what to tell you. You're scared I might fail.
Let me see.
I don't know what to tell you. You're scared.
So I'm going to pick it up from here, and then I would kind of take this out to wherever in the section I felt like it was too low. So obviously I would hear that out.
You're scared I might fail you, and so you're leaving here before it goes wrong. Don't you know you can't keep running from where you belong?
So here, I may decide that, okay, I want to raise this up just a little bit,
You're scared I might fail you.
So it sits on top of the track.
You're leaving here before it goes wrong. Don't you know you can't keep running from where you belong?
And then, for this line, maybe I want to go up even more to kind of raise that up. And then I can go into individual words or phrases or parts of words and kind of dial in those individual things. A lot more of the detail in this particular track is going to come in. And also, depending upon how well and you create the density and compression characteristics to even out the performance, a lot of this may be taken care of by just, the way that you process the track coming into the automation. And then you can get into all kinds of other things like automation plugins like Vocal Rider and stuff like that, which starts to emulate it. Or if you have a work surface and you work and you write fader automation, then you can kind of go in and really dial in the vocal by ear, which is sort of the old school kind of classic way, rather than drawing it in the way that you see here. And normally, if I'm really getting into detailed automation, I'm going to zoom up, obviously, kind of dial this in. But really, listen, a good way to, one other trick to getting your automation right is to listen at extremely low volumes. When you listen at very low volumes, what happens is it makes very obvious things that are too low in the mix and things that are too high in the mix. There's a reason for that, especially if you have smaller speakers. This is really cool. And if you have an alternate pair of speakers that are smaller, go to them. Because what'll happen is you'll find that you have to be careful with low-end instruments. So, don't kind of over-push on those types of things. But if you got a good representative area, like for the bass and the kick drum in the mid-range area, so that you can hear those notes and stuff like that, your balances should be pretty good. It'll be really obvious when your vocal is too loud or too low. So try that if you find you have trouble getting automation right. If you listen at very loud volumes when you do automation, you'll find that you'll get driver compression, whether it's from the headphones or from the speakers, And so it's effectively compressing your mix acoustically. And then what happens is like you think your automation is really great. When you turn it down, though, you don't get any of those types of things. You get a lot of accuracy. And it really, I've always found it really kind of speaks volumes for what's going on. So even with all the Fletcher Munson things that are going on, it's a very effective way. And then, of course, reference it. Go back up in volume, change your volumes, and make adjustments accordingly. But anyway, there's a few tips on an approach to layering mix automation and how to go about processing. Start big, overall static levels, go section by section, go word by word or phrase by phrase, and then get into the little stuff and kind of whittle your way down to those individual things, right? Start with a big and get smaller. There you have it. Mixing with Mike, mixing tip, layering mix automation.